Ullrich now, I think, starting to lose a little bit of time, Phil, because there is no car around that corner anymore. There is no sight of the two men who are locked together in their own personal battle. Now, this again is another move. This is Calcioli who's gone off the front.
And this is the man who was dropped on the lower part of the climb, and he came back, and now he's going for it. This could be a huge boost for the Crédit Agricole team. He was brought in to be the man of the mountains for the overall. He's let them down in that respect. But what would they think of a win here? Well, here's the answer. Oscar Pereiro answers.
Oscar Pereiro's come back. This has put George Hincapie into a spot of bother, but look how Hincapie responds. He wants to win here this afternoon. He has the freshest legs in what was originally a 14-man group, and Hincapie is right on the tail. If any of these guys want to win the stage this afternoon, they've got to get rid of Big George, because there's nobody is going to beat him in the sprint.
Well, don't be surprised if George tries one of his own here, because he's so strong. He's taken a leaf out of Lance Armstrong's book and just sprinted across the gap. Pereiro might say to George, look, we've got to go. We've got the other two. Let's leave it to fight between ourselves. Pereiro takes it up. George Hincapie follows. The other two have cracked Bogart as well.
Well, that was a great response by Hincapie. Pereiro now, Phil, actually doesn't really know what to do. He knows the power of George Hincapie. You know, Hincapie's had a good season as they go inside of 4 kilometers to go. Hincapie's had 3 wins this year. 2 of those came in the Dauphiné Libéré just 3 weeks before the start of the Tour de France. It's going to be a tough job for the man on the right-hand side there to beat the man in blue and grey.
For 10 years, George Hincapie has been running in the Tour de France. He has never won a stage. He's always unselfishly been at the side of Armstrong. That's why he's here. That's his raison d'etre. And now he's got the chance of a lifetime to win one for himself.
Both looking back, they're both nervous, as you can see the banner there indicating the 4 kilometers to go point. And Hincapie is wondering, can I stay with this man? Because this man, in theory, on paper, is a superior climber to me, but that's not at the end of a long stage like this.
Well, we go back to Ivan Basso and Lance Armstrong. They're alone again. And this is another man who's been alone since the climb started, Jan Ullrich. But that car is just in front, and the other two are just ahead of the car. He's certainly not losing ground, but I don't think we can say he's catching up either.
I think he's locked right now in his own personal battle. There's a huge crowd here on the slopes of Vendée, and they knew something special was going to happen. But Michael Rasmussen now is starting to find his rhythm. He wants to keep second place overall. I think that might be just a little bit too far away from him, but he's still battling, Phil, to keep himself on the podium.
Well, Armstrong at 5:42 now behind the 2 front runners. And I think Rasmussen is about a minute behind Ullrich, and he's trying to get rid of Vinokurov here, as he's desperate now to defend that polka dot jersey. He's okay at the moment. He's holding 3rd position in the race. I think it's fair to say he'll lose 2nd.
I think he will lose 2nd unless he does something very magical before the end of this race here this afternoon, but he's in a strange position. Came to the Tour to win a stage and win the polka dot jersey. He never thought he was going to be battling for a podium position, and it looks as if there's a spectator there. One of the Basso spectators got in front of the television, and if you do get in front of a motorbike when the motorbike's going uphill, it can be rather dangerous. Well, Armstrong and Basso are locked together in a major battle, while further up the road we have got an unbelievable battle going on. It's so dangerous for the 2 leaders. You know, just a few moments ago there was a nasty accident when the motorbike camera behind the 2 leaders, Pereiro and Hincapie, in fact rode over the top of a spectator. But I have to say, Hincapie is looking very calm and collected, and he will get more excitement, Phil, as they get closer to the summit of this climb. Every kilometer that goes by, I think Hincapie's going to feel just that little bit more solid, and he'll start to get himself into the skin of a winner.
Well, George knows now that Lance is not going to join him on this climb. We're 2 miles from the top, 5 minutes 20 is the gap. The battle for the final yellow jersey in Paris is right here between Basso and Lance Armstrong. The battle for first place today is between Pereiro and George Hincapie.
Well, they've just gone under the banner indicating 3 kilometers to go to the summit. Now, this is really quite a remarkable performance by Hincapie. He has always, in the last 6 years, helped Lance Armstrong in the mountains. Today, he was given a free ticket. Go in the breakaway. That might be our best method of defense, because at least you'll still be there at the end if we catch up. But right now, they are not going to catch up. The winner of the stage must certainly come from one of these 2 riders. Pereiro is all over his machine. I don't think he can win the stage if he doesn't get rid of George Hincapie, because Hincapie, at the end of the day, is a sprinter.
Well, mixed feelings here, because Pereiro has been something of a man of this Tour de France and deserves the victory probably more than George Hincapie does. Further down the slope, though, Basso still working with Armstrong. Neither of these boys have cracked. They are not shirking their duty. They are getting on with it. Not far off our camera is Ullrich.
Ullrich is actually only 22 seconds behind Armstrong and Basso. This part of the climb is actually starting to suit him. This is a very strange climb. It's a horrible climb because there are moments when it's steep, there are moments when it's flat. It actually suits the pure climbers because they are the guys who can change their rhythm. But for Ullrich, who's the powerful climber, he can use his big gears on the flatter part of the course. The crowd is ballistic here. They are cheering on everybody. They are probably hoping that Oscar Pereiro is going to take the win. But if Hincapie takes the win, they shouldn't worry too much because he can speak Spanish too.
Well, the gap back to Armstrong now is 5 minutes 22. He won't see them till the finish. These are the two riders making the waves up here. Look at this as they crash through the people from Spain. Number 4, George Hincapie, 68 is Oscar Pereiro. Both deserve the victory, and they're going to take it to the line because nobody's going to catch them.
And I don't think anybody's going to drop George Hincapie because he's getting the bit between his teeth. He can feel more confidence. He is looking up there at the banners. He knows the finish line is getting so much closer. The two riders who are chasing a little further back are actually around about 30 seconds in arrears. We've just had the running of the bulls in Pamplona. Well, this is the running of the Basques on the slope here of Plada de.
Well, a Spanish rider had to be in the frame somewhere, and he's not a Basque rider, but he's certainly Spanish, and that's a Spanish flag. And Oscar Pereiro is riding on a tidal wave of noise here. Lance just checks over his shoulder to see if anybody is coming back. He couldn't possibly see in this crowd.
You can't see further back more than about 100 meters because this is a wave of people just opening up to allow the riders to come through and then closing in behind them. As soon as they get that little bit closer to the finish, they will get inside the barriers and finally they will feel safe. But Hincapie now must be thinking, what am I going to do? He probably never even looked at the race book to see what the finishing line looks at because he didn't think he was going to be here.
Correct. Inside 2 kilometers for the leaders, 5 minutes 21 the gap to Lance Armstrong and Ivan Basso. And now they are just slowing down for the first time. And Jan Ullrich continues to fight here. This is Oscar Sevilla he's now picking up, who was originally with that breakaway. He slowed down. Can he help Ullrich?
Well, he'll try and do what he can. He's probably given the information by his team manager. Wait for Jan, try and pace him, see if you can lift him up. Because it's not really important for Ullrich in this situation to catch the two riders in front. What's important is for him to put time between himself and Michael Rasmussen.
Yep.
After all, let's not forget Ullrich's worst performance in the Tour de France since 1996 is 4th. He doesn't want to be 4th again. He would like to get onto the podium this year with Lance Armstrong.
Well, look at that face now. He's very pained. He's shouting at Oscar Sevilla, I think, to just lift it a little bit. This is further up the road. Look at the determination here now of Lance Armstrong and the grimace of pain on Ivan Basso. I don't think he's going to get rid of Basso too easily. He looks a bit sharp there.
He looks very sharp, but he is suffering. But everyone has to suffer on the slopes of the Plada de. Ullrich, you can see the size of the gear that he's using. And in fact, I don't think Oscar Sevilla can go fast enough for Ullrich, who says, OK, just lift it again. Keep me in this race. Get me up to the podium. This is a moment of panic as we go just a fraction further up the road. And this race now is being looked on by hundreds of thousands of Spanish spectators. And you can be absolutely certain everybody there with an orange t-shirt or an orange hat on wants the man in first place to win, Oscar Pereiro.
Just look at these people, just enough room for these two riders to get through. They pull back at the last minute. They must be deaf here with the decibels of the shouting here from the Spanish flags. Oscar Pereiro has done all of the pacemaking, Hincapie all of the following. But it won't be that way when he sees the town and the finishing line. We are now approaching the top of the Plada de. We are looking for 1 kilometer to go of this remarkable day in the saddle.
Hincapie losing it a bit there. 1 kilometer to go to the summit. That's about 1 kilometer to go to the finish. And there is the Flamme Rouge. They have finally reached safety, the safe haven of the barriers. They've got 1,000 meters to go. Hincapie looks over his shoulder. What's the situation? Is Calcioli coming back? Well, George is not coming back. The winner is going to be either of these two riders we're looking at. Green and yellow is Pereiro for Spain. Blue and grey is Hincapie for the United States.
Pereiro has been obliged to lead all the way. He's been carried up here by the shouts of his countrymen who have come over the mountains from Spain to look for a Spaniard to win. Now the pressure is on. George, of course, speaks fluent Spanish, but that's as close as he'll get. He is from the United States. He is an American, and he can't believe he's in a position to win now. Lance won't be coming up. He's 5 minutes, 25 seconds behind at the moment.
Hincapie, Phil, is looking right now at winning one of the legendary stages of the Tour de France. We've been over 6 mountain passes here this afternoon. He is in an ideal position to take the victory. He's got the explosive sprint, but when you've been away for so long, there is always a doubt. In theory, there is no man here around who should be able to beat Hincapie.
Well, I don't think, Paul, since 1999, any of Lance Armstrong's teammates have ever won a stage in the Tour de France. And this is about to change, I think. Surely he's got enough left now, because he's had the passengers ride ever since they broke away after 27 kilometres. There were 14, there are now 2, and still Hincapie is behind.
He looks powerful, he looks relaxed, and now he knows they're getting slowly but surely to the finish. He's in the ideal position. He has to make sure he's in the right gear. Pereiro gets out of the saddle. He is pacing Hincapie, but Hincapie is looking now like a man who is tense. He's looking like a man who is ready to pounce as they come up. They haven't seen the finish line yet, but Hincapie has got the explosion. I just hope he doesn't make a mistake.
The pressure now as Hincapie is waiting to see where it is. Oscar Pereiro responding to the crowd. He's sure he will have no answer, having led all of this way. Hincapie is going to make this a formality. Pereiro takes him wide. It's still a long way to go.
It is long and interminable, the 1,000 metres at the top of a mountain like this. There are 300 metres to go. Oscar Pereiro opens up the gap, but Hincapie's ready.
Hincapie goes at 200, and now there'll be no answer for Pereiro. This is going to be yet another memorable moment in the life of this American team. Lance Armstrong, when he can't win, why not send them George Hincapie to finish off a perfect day of tactical copybook reading? And George Hincapie, after 10 years in the Tour de France, finally gets a victory, and he cannot believe it. George Hincapie, Tour de France stage winner, Planet Day, 2005.
Behind Hincapie and Sevilla, Calcioli, Bogert and Brochard each came in one after the other. And behind them, Basso and Armstrong were still climbing together.
These two have raced one-on-one all the way up the mountain. They have thrown their best punches at one another. Now they're going to cross the line together to live to fight another day. And what a day this was between these two riders. Ivan Basso deserves that place. 5 minutes and 4 seconds down. Coming up behind Jan Ullrich in the distance, there he is Michael Rasmussen. If you deserve to keep your lead, then you do now, because he will conserve 3rd place tonight in the Tour de France. That is a show of defiance, if there has been one.
Well, that's a show of defiance, Phil, by a man who said he came to the Tour de France with 2 objectives. The 2 objectives were to win a stage, he did that, and to win the King of the Mountains classification. He's well on his way to doing that, but by catching up with Jan Ullrich in the final 500 meters of this stage, he is actually going to keep himself right up there in 3rd place overall at the end of the day.
What a ride, and here comes Rasmussen as well.
Final week took the race out of the Pyrenees, but it went via the Col de Marie Blanc and the Col d'Aubisque. 180 kilometers with a fairly flat run into Pau after the final climb.
Looking at the chasers here at the moment, it's been a very, very good race, Paul. 47 kilometers covered in the opening hour. It's going to slow down now. We're on the climb here of the Col d'Aubisque, and at the moment 10 riders are clear, and Cadel Evans, the Australian, best placed, 11th overall this morning, 12 minutes 57 back.
Well, you know, a move by Cadel Evans today, if he can conserve 5 or 6 minutes before the end of today's stage, he could see himself climbing up into 5th place in the overall classification, and that would be a great performance by him. It's like Laszlo Bodrogi here having a hard time. A lot of riders really surprised, I think, by the pace. Many people looking at this final stage in the mountains as one that they thought would be tackled easily, but that's certainly not the case.
Well, over the rest day, 2 riders, by the way, didn't start today. Bagstead just getting inside the time limit at the Plat d'Aix by a minute, but decided not to come out today. 156 riders are still in the race, and at 189, 4 of the teams still have all 9 men. The other non-starter today, Gianluca Bortolami of the Lamprey team. They've only got 5 men left in that squad.
Yeah, there's not many people at the dinner table in the evening, but certainly this looks a little bit like Roberto Heras trying to falsify his company with the main field as well. He's had a very quiet Tour de France this year. He had the hopes of Spain on his shoulders, but he wasn't able to live up to that climbing ability that made him one of Lance Armstrong's dedicated lieutenants for a number of years.
Well, we're on the climb of the Col d'Aubisque. It is again a beautiful day, and the riders don't know how lucky they are, because, Paul, when you've ridden on the Col d'Aubisque in the past, you've been in dense cloud.
Well, the thing is about the Pyrenees, it can change quite dramatically. Actually, yesterday was not very beautiful at the start of the rest day, because the clouds were very much over the summits of the Pyrenean high spots. But today, there is hardly a cloud in the sky, and these riders are enjoying a very nice day of racing in great climatic conditions.
Well, these are the counter moves. Armstrong is not going to raise a pedal in anger, for somebody like Heras began to shake him because they're too far behind overall. And remember a man by the name of Thomas Voigtler last year, who at one stage got within 22 seconds ahead of Armstrong towards the end of his reign of 10 days in yellow. Well, now he is over 3 hours behind him in the classification.
Well, putting that into perspective, that in fact is around about 120 kilometers or 75 miles. He's 75 miles behind Lance Armstrong if these stages were put back to back.
It's amazing what a difference a year makes. It doesn't seem to make any difference to Lance Armstrong, I must say. Here is Alexander Vinokourov. He's trying to get away from the peloton at the moment. There are the 10 leaders up the road by 7 minutes or more. And then there's a group of riders now getting away in between just to try and catch up with the leaders.
Well, just looking here at the leading group, this was initially a group of 11 riders who managed to get away at the start. And we can see here Cedric Vasseur in the middle of the group, who rides for Team Cofidis here this afternoon. Obviously looking to try and get some more glory out of this race. They got a victory with David Moncoutier. There is Cadel Evans. He's the man who would make the best operation here in the afternoon, because he starts the day in 11th place, 12 minutes 57 seconds down on Lance Armstrong, and a breakaway like this afternoon would very much move Cadel Evans up into the top 5 or 6 positions by the end of the day, and I'm sure that's exactly what he's looking for. So just a reminder of the members in this leading group. We've got Zandio from Ile Baleares, Cadel Evans. Freddie Rodriguez was in the group, but actually got dropped a little earlier on the start of this climb. Juan Antonio Fletcher's in the group. Chris Horner from the United States of America. Vasseur, Geslin, and I think Philippe Gilbert, the sprinter from FDJ.com, has just been dropped.
Well, Rodriguez didn't even put in any effort to stay with them as soon as he started. The sprinter from De Vitamin Lotto, who normally leads out Robin McEwen, he immediately just went up at his own pace. But look at this now, an attack. There's that, I think, Jan Ullrich going off the front there.
Well, Ullrich wants to finish the Tour de France in 3rd place. He's currently lying 4th, around about 2 minutes behind Michael Rasmussen, and it's on a day like this that Big Jan has got a chance. And I have to say, Jan Ullrich, Phil, I thought was splendid the day before the rest day. He gave 110% in his attacking style.
Well, we haven't seen this before from Jan Ullrich, attacking on the last climb, a serious climb of this year's Tour de France. A very interesting move indeed, and it looks like it might be a plan here.
Well, this is Bobby Jewett coming across. I think he wants to play a defensive role. Andreas Kloden as well. T-Mobile, we've watched them for 14 days of the Tour de France and been waiting for something special from this team, which is, on paper, an all-star team, but unfortunately they never really seem to get it together. But again today, last day of the mountains, they are throwing caution to the wall.
Well, Jewett could be along here in defense of his team captain, Ivan Basso, who's up to second rather now. He finished 3rd last year. This is the most interesting move. There was a new flag on the row for us. It was the flag of New Zealand, or it was the All Blacks flag anyway. This is the peloton. Now, an interesting move this, because Armstrong again has not showed any interest in reacting yet. Well, I guess you needn't bother, because they're coming right back alongside.
Yeah, but Jan Ullrich is still in
away,
front. Yeah, I don't think Armstrong is going to panic too much about the position of Jan Ullrich, because he, in fact, is already giving Jan Ullrich almost a 6-minute start. But it will put pressure on other teams. It'll put pressure certainly on Team Rabobank to chase, and, of course, on Team CSC as well. But this is the tactic of Armstrong, Phil, in the last week of the race. He allows people to go off the front and forces the other teams who are now defending their own position to come up and do the work on his behalf.
Well, some interesting tactics now, but they're not afraid to try again, and that's good to see here, even though it is a long way over the top. Remember that the 10 leaders are 7.5 minutes ahead. If they can continue to increase on the climb, which at the moment I think is unlikely because of this attack by Ullrich, but if they can hold that gap over the top, then they might have a chance of running to the finish, and then it would be interesting to see who could take it out.
It's a long way to the finish from the summit of this climb, the Col de l'Aubisque. The Col de l'Aubisque comes at 108 kilometers covered, so they've actually got around about 72 kilometers to go down to the finish line in Pau. They've currently got 79 kilometers to go, so that puts them around about 7.5 kilometers from the summit of the climb, and there's confirmation. As again, we see another move coming here from Team CSC. This is Carlos Sastre. And you can see there, if you look at the front end of the peloton, the riders of Team Discovery Channel are certainly not panicking at all. They're just sitting back and allowing everybody else to do the pacemaking for them. They will not let anybody rattle their cage at all over these next couple of days, because as far as they're concerned, they're in a very strong tactical position, and it's up to everybody else to battle out for the podium places. A bit further up, this is Roberto Heras. Heras is an awful long way down in the overall classification. He starts the day in 48th place, almost an hour and a half behind Lance Armstrong. And this is a man who on 3 occasions has been the winner of the Vuelta a España and was a very great lieutenant for Lance Armstrong for a number of years on the US Postal Service team. Now this looks very much like the shape of Cadel Evans. Well, this is pretty remarkable. Cadel Evans the other day said he'd never attacked in a big stage race, but he was going to do so.
Well, they've gone up to the leaders here, Paul, and this is an interesting move from Cadel Evans, because Cadel was looking for the early move. He said so before the start. He got into it, and remember, he is 11th overall at the moment. 12 minutes 57 behind Lance Armstrong in his first Tour de France.
Well, this is a great move here by Cadel Evans, and it was funny, a couple of days ago he said, well, I've never really attacked in a big race before. He says, what I normally do is just sit there and everybody just falls away from me, but before the end of the Tour de France, I'm going to go out on the attack and see how it feels, and what a great day to do it.
Well, Cadel Evans is on the way, and this is interesting because this is a good rhythm. Now, there's been a tragedy yesterday as far as Australian and the world of cycling. It's very sad because of an accident in a women's event just before the start of the Tour of Germany, or a tour in Germany. A learner driver drove into the bunch of the Australian cyclists who were training, and as a result of that, Amy Safe, or now Amy Gillette, was killed. And Cadel Evans, who knew her very well, said his best way of expressing his sorrow was to win today, and he said he was going to go on the attack, and that's exactly what he's done. Now, further down the slopes, this is Jan Ullrich here, who is now out on the attack, and he started about a mile ago down this pass.
He's just been joined here by Carlos Sastre. So once again, the 2 big teams, the 2 big challenges to Lance Armstrong are going out on the attack. Now, the team manager came up there very quickly indeed, and I wonder what he would have to say there to that move by Jan Ullrich. Looking further down, you can see again it's a fairly large main field we're looking at, and nearly all of the major favourites are in this group. But we do know that Levi Leipheimer, Phil, had a very nasty start to the day.
Actually, just looking this way, I don't think it is Jan Ullrich for the moment. We'll check him out in a minute. He's got dropped, so I don't think it is. Might have been Toby Steinhauser there. Well, they split up anyway. Now, let me say, Serrano, Pereiro and Mazzolini are in the chase group further up the road. Rodriguez joined them, coming from the leaders back to the chase, and I'm not sure where he is at the moment, but from those leaders, Cadel Evans has gone 4th on his own, and here he is, and he's trying desperately now to, it's an awful long time trial to the finish, 78 kilometers. He's just on what will it be, 7 kilometers still to climb here on the Aubisque. But this is a man who is going to finish the mountain to the Tour de France, obviously feeling strong. We've always said over the years that when he came to the Tour de France, he would be a player, Cadel Evans, and he's certainly not letting us down.
He certainly isn't letting us down at all, but another man who's been very aggressive on today's stage is Alexander Vinokourov. He too is trying to move himself up in the overall classification. These are the last big mountains of the Tour de France this year.
So Evans has left the group of 10, 9 chasers now. There are 3 riders together. I think poor Freddie Rodriguez has gone all the way back, and he'll be almost picked up by the main field. Armstrong led here, which again is thinning out quite quickly here. This happened on the Marie Blanc, got down to about 20 men before they got to the top, and then everybody caught up again. But right now, Paul, it's also noticeable a number of Armstrong's teammates are going backwards in that second group.
Yes, they are once again sliding backwards, and that's, you can see Jan Ullrich right in the middle there. Right on his tail is the yellow jersey of Lance Armstrong. Again, T-Mobile are trying to do what they can to put a lot of pressure and isolate Armstrong on this last mountain stage. And by the way, although the race is rather complicated, Cadel Evans is the leader, chased by a group of 9 riders. Then there's a group of 3 riders a little bit further back, Pereiro, Serrano and Eddie Mazzolini. Freddie Rodriguez has been caught in the middle there, still trying to get across the gap is Alexander Vinokourov. He's chased by Roberto Heras. And then we've got that yellow jersey group, which contains Armstrong, Ullrich and the rest.
And the spread over the lot is just over 7 minutes, so it's not huge yet. Not with a long way to go anyway, but just look at the pain here at the back. Riders will be happy to be over the top of this one today, I think, as they start to string out, and the Armstrong group is getting a little bit of ahead of the bunch.
This is Alexander Vinokourov. He's catching fast Freddie there, Freddie Rodriguez. He was in that early breakaway, which was made up of 11 riders, but he's just been caught and passed fairly dramatically by the man who is the champion of Kazakhstan, Alexander Vinokourov, 8th at the start of today. 9 minutes and 38 seconds behind Lance Armstrong, but only 3 or 4 minutes away from 5th place in the overall classification. But there's a serious selection going on here. That's Ullrich on the right-hand side, Basso on the left-hand side. Armstrong looks fairly comfortable there. He's got a teammate alongside him, Landis and Leipheimer and Mancebo. So all the top men in the overall classification very much present and correct, as Armstrong has a teammate here who's just had a quick word with and said, come on, pick up the pace, let's put these boys in order. After all, Team Discovery Channel is the strongest team in the race, and they proved that just a couple of days ago. Now this is Big George, and rather interesting, you know, just the other day after Hincapie won his stage, Armstrong said, if you asked me whether or not George Hincapie could win the Tour de France one day, I would say yes, he could, but he'd have to stop riding the one-day races in April and May. So this is Iban Mayo. Hopes of him winning a stage here are very, very rare. He's a man who the majority of the Spanish supporters came out to see over the last couple of Pyrenean stages. This is his last chance if he wants to do something today, and right now he's not able to stay in contact with the yellow jersey group of Lance Armstrong. Moving a bit further up, just getting a quick glimpse there of Sylvain Chavanel. Further forward there you can just spot Tobias Steinhauser. There's Guerini. Further up, that was Bobby Julich, number 23. This is actually the second group on the road, and in that group as well was Chechu Ribiera. But they're slowly but surely pulling themselves up here to Carlos Sastre. Now another move. This is Jan Ullrich. Ullrich's having a go here. He's looking for the big move.
Well, I don't think, in all honesty, Paul, I've ever seen Jan Ullrich quite so animated in any Tour de France. He's really into it now these last few days.
He is, and look at this. This is the man who's responding to all of these attacks, and he's dragging the polka dot jersey across with him there of Michael Rasmussen, and the 2 riders getting caught out a little bit by that acceleration, Levi Leipheimer and Floyd Landis. But this has got to be the Tour de France, Phil, where Armstrong has been attacked the most over the last couple of seasons.
They've never given up. I know that they're racing really also for the second place podium finish between 4 riders, possibly 5 or 6, but we'll wait and see as the split comes here now. Landis is good, and there's Leipheimer, Mancebo, they got caught there.
They got caught by that acceleration, and it was the acceleration of Armstrong chasing down a move by Jan Ullrich. This really has been an incredible stage, and it's always very difficult, Phil, the day after a rest day, because these riders had 2 very difficult Pyrenean stages. Then the body had a cut in between on the rest day, and a lot of bodies don't like that, and I'm sure that's why Levi Leipheimer was actually dropped on the first third category climb of the day.
But let's not forget, Vinokourov went with him, can you believe that? Both dropped on the first climb, and they came back into the peloton. They've recovered well because they've been up at the head ever since. Vinokourov has attacked twice so far, and at the moment he's ahead of this group. He's just got rid of Rodriguez, who will be coming back to this group very shortly, I'm sure of that, as Basso is the second wheel here. And there's the range of sprockets today as we look at the leader, Cadel Evans, still tapping out the rhythm in first place on the road. The breakaway is splitting up all over the mountain now. Then there's a group of three, Pereiro, Serrano, Mazzolini, but there are others in between as well. We'll pick them out as we get to them on the camera. Here's Fred coming back very quickly here. He's going to see Lance Armstrong go by him. This is the advanced group. I don't think Fred will want to get mixed up in this somehow.
No, I think he'd be quite happy to let them go by. Freddie is a sprinter. He was a man who was responsible for a couple of the victories of Robbie McEwen. He's Robbie McEwen's lead-out man on the flat stages. He got in that early breakaway. He actually did a lot of work in the early breakaway to set something up for his teammate, Cadel Evans, who currently is the lone leader in the race. He went off the front and left that leading group of 9 riders. And he's currently leading the race by around about 5.5 minutes over this group of very select riders, which contains the yellow jersey, Jan Ullrich, Ivan Basso, and actually all of the riders in the top 7 places in the overall classification.
A group of 9 riders here now. Armstrong just observing them all. Look at that beautiful sight, the mountains all around them. And here comes Cadel Evans, midway to 3/4 up the Col d'Aubisque in his first Tour de France. Brilliant riding by Cadel Evans, this 11th overall this morning. He's been as high as 4th in the race today with the lead he had over the field. They'll pick him back if they can, but if they don't, then he's looking at a top 6 situation in the Tour. Magnificent in his first Tour.
He's waited for the day, he's waited for the occasion to present itself, and he got into that early morning breakaway, as we call it, of 11 riders after just 19 kilometers. And again, a very fast first hour of racing, 47.5 kilometers of racing covered in just the first 60 minutes of the day. We're getting further up towards the summit here of the Col d'Aubisque. Actually, they go over the summit, it drops down a fraction, then they have to go over the small Col de Soulot, and then it's a very long descent down into the valley and a long ride then down into the finishing town of Pau. But Roberto Heras here is actually riding himself across the gap to join up with Alexander Vinokourov, who too is looking at, in fact, trying to get himself a higher place in the overall classification than his current 8th.
Well, a good pair of legs coming up to help out Alexander Vinokourov there. Roberto Heras moving up alongside him. Cadel Evans up there, I think, putting in the finest performance we've seen from an Australian since the halcyon days of their greatest ever cyclist in the Tours, Phil Anderson. Anderson rode the Tour 13 times, finished every one. He won the white jersey, also wore the yellow jersey.
Well, Roberto Heras trying to get some glory here for Liberty Seguras. This man is a magnificent climber, but unfortunately he really hasn't been prominent at all in the Tour de France, and this is a way of possibly saving some glory for Liberty Seguros, whose best man in the overall standings is Jörg Jatz, the German, who started the day in 15th place. But this man, Phil, I have to say, is really burning up the field. Cadel Evans riding for Australia.
And riding well.
Well, looking here at Cadel Evans, he's, I think, a little bit more motivated today than on other stages of the Tour de France because of the tragedy that struck the Australian cycling team in Germany just 24 hours ago. And Cadel Evans said that he wanted to do something special in the memory of those ladies who were involved in a tragic accident in preparation for a stage race in Germany. And I think on the shoulders of Cadel Evans at the front of the race, he will just have that little bit of extra inspiration.
Well, this is the very select group here. Looks like George is beginning to get himself in a spot of bother today after that long escape 2 days ago and the last day of racing in the Tour, the rest day yesterday. And he's having a little bit of trouble. No, he's coming back, no problems. He's back on. That's Christophe Moreau just ahead of him. No, it's not. It is Sheekin who's got back. The man that got that plastic balloon type thing they clap with here in his face. And it was very nasty, it was too. Armstrong on the left of our picture. Doesn't look under any effort at all just now.
No stress for Armstrong. He can just sit back and watch and see the tactics of the other riders develop in front of him and see when and where he wants to react. People might say this has not been the most dramatic lead that Armstrong's taken in the Tour de France, but as far as he's concerned, Phil, he's not worried about doing moments of panache in the race, winning stages as he did last year. His most important goal in this year's Tour de France is to make sure that he wins the race on the 24th of July, which is, I think, this year why he actually hasn't taken any risks.
Very, very careful. Armstrong, Hincapie, Ullrich, Sastre, Mancebo, Rasmussen, Kishakin and Levi Leipheimer compose the 10 riders in this very select group. But they are, the majority of these, the men who have made this year's Tour de France. Jan Ullrich has changed his attitude in the last few days from a follower to an attacker, and we all love him more for that. I think he's been ridden really well. Ivan Basso has shown us that potentially he's the next successor to Armstrong in the Tour de France 2006. That's him peeping into our picture there at the moment. Levi Leipheimer's had his ups and downs today, but he's got his ups right now because he's right up there. Well, don't forget that Australia in mourning today because of the tragedy which has hit their international women's cycling team when a car rode into a group of Australian women who were training for a race in Germany, and as a result, Amy Gillett, who was formerly Amy Safe, the next international rower who was more than making her way as a great cyclist, was sadly killed. And because of that, Cadel Evans said the only way he can say how he feels, because words he cannot say, is to get out front today and win the stage, and that's exactly what he's trying to do.
Well, here he is. He's very motivated. I think this man is a great talent. Let's not ever forget about Cadel Evans, that he wore the pink jersey as leader of the Giro d'Italia, and he's here riding the Tour de France for the first time, trying to win it in 11th place at the start of the day. You know, if he could get to the finish with a 4 or 5 minute advantage, Cadel Evans would find himself moving up to, I would think, around about 5th or 6th place overall. But there is a massive battle going on behind, because two men are away from that leading group of the yellow jersey, and this is Alexander Vinokourov and Roberto Heras. So they're looking towards the summit of the Col de l'Aubisque. The Col de l'Aubisque is a magnificent climb, especially on a day like this, because once you get to the summit, you've got a very long false flat between the summit of the Col de l'Aubisque and the Col de Soulor. And if you've ever looked at any books on cycling, some of the most magnificent photographs you will see are taken on this climb here between these two peaks, and these two riders are hoping to try and ride across the gap. Cadel Evans currently is holding around about a 5-minute advantage over the group of all of the contenders for this year's Tour de France, including Armstrong, Basso, Rasmussen, Jan Ullrich, and Sebo, Levi Leipheimer, and of course Floyd Landis. The only man again who appears to be missing was the Frenchman Christophe Moreau, who was 9th at the start of the day.
Good steady pacemaking. I don't know how long he's going to keep this up, Sastre, for Ivan Basso, because he's looked in pain for a while now, but he's doing a good job. He's reduced the peloton to just a select band of merry men, and here they are. Levi Leipheimer is in there as well. This is further up just ahead, and this is Roberto Heras trying to put some matters to rights. He's nearly an hour and a half behind Armstrong. Unbelievable for a climber of this man's quality.
Well, what's fairly impressive though, Phil, is Cadel Evans actually has a 1.5-minute advantage over the remnants of that breakaway he was with earlier on, and so he really is opening himself up rather a serious gap. But this man is nicknamed the Devil. He's been coming to all of the major stage races for the last few years, and I think he's looking to bring some other interest to the front end of the main field.
Well, he's the only man they never punch when he starts running behind like that, because they don't want to offend him. This is the Armstrong group. Lance has just sat there. You see, he always sits out the group and watches what's going on, ready to move if somebody starts to sprint away. He also keeps himself in a much safer position if somebody should touch a wheel and go down. George Hincapie on the back there. This looks like Kashakin is in trouble now. He's got smashed in the face today by a spectator. It looked like an accident, but he did make his nose bleed on the climb of the Marie Blanc. But I was saying about George, he was dropped a few moments ago, and he's got back. He's done well to do that. Landis is here, so too is Leipheimer.
Well, it's rather important, I would say, for Andre Kashakin, Phil, to try and stay in contact, because he's the second-place rider in the young rider classification. Well, the last time we actually went over the Col d'Aubisque was back in 2002, and the man who went over the top on that occasion was the great French rider Laurent Jalabert, who was having a fabulous season.
And he's working now on French television, and according to the French television people we've been chatting with, he's doing a really good job too. Well, he should. He's had the performances, and he's certainly got the knowledge. Up to the leader now, Cadel Evans, riding in the style of the legendary Phil Anderson of Australia here, because this is a man who can one day win the Tour de France. And I think today he's showing us that. You know, it was only a couple of days ago, Paul, he said, I might be good, but these guys who are beating me, I'm not in their class. But you know, as you know, you can improve, and I think in the years ahead, this man can win the Tour.
Well, you have good days and bad days as a professional cyclist, and Cadel Evans had a couple of bad days. He was really put under pressure because of the way these guys were attacking on the big mountain stages. But today, he is doing what he claims he has never done before in his career as a professional road racer, actually gone out on the attack. And this could be a new sensation for Cadel Evans, who, let's not forget, Phil, comes to the sport of road racing after being an exceptionally successful mountain biker.
He was the world's best mountain biker, there's no doubt about that. As we drop down a few numbers of people here, because we've lost count of the men in between, but we suspect there will be 14 riders ahead of these two at the moment. Alexander Vinokourov and Roberto Heras on the American flags, almost as common here this year as the French flag, because of course the Americans wanted to see Lance Armstrong for the last time. Win or lose, he will retire on Sunday coming. This is Armstrong's group. Jan Ullrich has had a dig today. He went away at one stage. They brought him back. And now it just seems to be a case of fast tempo riding. Kashakin has just gone onto the back there, but he's hanging on, number 108. So too is Hincapie, the hero of the toughest day through the Pyrenees. He also has been in trouble. This rider is now definitely in trouble. Andreas Cloden.
Hats off to George Hincapie after that long breakaway just a couple of days ago before the rest day. He now knows he has to stay with Lance Armstrong for as long as possible. And you might wonder why he has to stay with Lance Armstrong. Well, Armstrong, again, is pretty much isolated. And if he was to have a mechanical incident or a flat tire on the descent here of the mountain, the team cars actually, Phil, are currently quite a long way behind. Hincapie's order would be to pass his wheel across to Lance Armstrong, and they would actually swap wheels if there was a problem for Armstrong mechanically.
Well, we're about a kilometre now from the summit. That's just over half a mile for Cadel Evans. He's made it look rather easy, I must say. But Cadel has ridden superbly. There is the kilometre marker. As he comes through this crowd, this has got to be one of the highlights of his career for Cadel Evans here, riding up to the crowd on the top of the all-category climb of the Col d'Aubisque. He's got 4:43 on the three pursuers, and he's got 5 minutes plus on Armstrong's group. So Armstrong's group, Paul, have pulled back 2.5 minutes on him.
They've pulled back 2.5 minutes, but it's not really Armstrong who is chasing. It's the pressure that's coming onto the front of the Armstrong group by Team CSC and by T-Mobile, who once again can see this as the last opportunity to shake the top of the overall classification. But it was a great move by Cadel Evans to decide to go away alone. But at the top, Phil, he is facing up to 72 kilometres riding towards the finish line in Po. That's a long way on your own.
It is an awful long way. A time trial, which is the best part of 2 hours. It won't be to take him about an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes, but that's a long way to hold off the Tour de France, I agree. Roads might be in his favour, though, because it's not flat. He's not in the wide open expanse of a promenade on the seacoast. It'll be undulating and quite hard.
Ullrich's going again.
Ullrich's giving the pressure again, further down. He's about 3 kilometres from the summit right now.
He is battling here, Phil, for a podium position in Paris. This is a man whose worst position in the Tour de France is 4th overall, and he was criticised for it. Now, that really is a shame.
Oh, this guy is always criticised for something or other. They're coming up on Vinokourov and Roberto Heras now, but there's only 4 of them coming up. Motorbikes need to move now as Lance Armstrong shepherds through Ullrich, Basso and Rasmussen, and just getting back as well, Leipheimer, Mancebo and Floyd Landis.
Well, Heras has tried again on the slopes of the Pyrenees to do something for his Spanish public, but he's not been able to because of the battle going on for a high podium finish. There you can see Jan Ullrich will not give up arms until the final day of the Tour de France here this year. Mancebo's in a spot of bother here at the back. Hincapie's disappeared.
Did you see Vinokourov drop back and hook up there with Ullrich? The first sign of friendship between the two, actually, because Vinokourov was happy to take up the pacemaking. There he is with Jan.
Well, he's a great character, Alexander Vinokourov. I wonder which team he will ride for next year. There's an awful lot of discussion because there's people assuming that he might move across to Team Discovery Channel, but we will not know. This is Francisco Mancebo, 5th overall. He is in difficulty now.
But he's not far from the top, and he better hope that it's not long to go because he's losing ground there. Just look at the scenery off the shoulder of Cadel Evans. He is almost at the summit. A big feather in his cap here as winner of this all-category climb. He won't be denied that now. Armstrong has decided to say, hey, guys, if you want to do this, I'll come and join in. Look at this.
This is going to be, Phil, the last big mountain of Lance Armstrong's career, and he wants to show these guys that he's still got a little bit of petrol left in the tank as we go to the summit of the climb, and Cadel Evans is going to go over the top with around about a 4-minute advantage over the Lance Armstrong yellow jersey group.
And I tell you what, look at his face. This guy is strong today. He is really driving. He's not hanging. He is pushing on here. Cadel Evans isn't thinking of waiting at the top of the Col d'Aubisque. He's going for the win.
He is going for the win. It's going to be a very long solo for him to do it, because from the summit to this, Phil, I don't think I've ever seen Cadel Evans' face look like that. It is screwed up in pain and determination.
Well, he is the man who has told us he has never attacked in a professional bicycle race in his life. He has only followed and then found everybody else has fell away from him. And he said, I'm going to attack and find out what it feels like. Well, he knows now.
This is Pereiro. Yeah, this is a complicated race here this afternoon, because there are riders scattered all over the slopes of this mountain. Pereiro is motivated by the fact he was beaten a couple of days ago to the summit of the big climb Pla d'Adet, and what he wants to do today, I think, is to try and get himself the stage victory. And he's actually going over the summit there in second place, so he's past the group of the early morning breakaway, which was initially 11 riders.
When we use the word complicated, we usually mean we haven't a clue what's going on, because frankly, Pereiro, we were never told he'd gone past the group, but he's gone over the top in second place. This will be for third place now. This is Mazzolini. So whatever happened to the breakaway, they've caught and been dropped by this group, as Mazzolini goes over there as well. And the Il Baliris rider who's gone over with him.
Well, that's Zandio. He was in the break early on.
That's right. Well, he was in the original group, so he hung on.
Yep, he survives. And the next rider coming over as well is the rider from Liberty Seguros, Marcos Serrano. He was also halfway across the group to the group with Oscar Pereira a few moments ago. And the next group, these you can see now, are starting to be the survivors still of that early morning breakaway. He'd said he wanted to win himself one of the average mountain stages. He was very aggressive early on in the year in Pyrenees. And again, Alexander Vinokourov is whacking them.
I make this his third serious move today since the race started to get rid of the group. They brought him back twice. He's trying again.
But look at Armstrong. Whenever Vinokourov attacks, he never chases him down. He doesn't have to, because Vinokourov is almost 10 minutes behind Armstrong in the overall classification. Again here, Phil, remnants of the early morning breakaway. That is Gilbert, the man from Française de Jeu, on the front, better suited as a sprinter on the flat stages. And the man with him, Juan Antonio Fletcher.
So this breakaway of what was originally 11, reduced to 10 immediately on the climb, has been blown all over the mountain now. We don't quite know who is left in front, but they're all going over in dribs and drabs. And what could well happen, of course, on the long descent, they will all regroup, and we could see that breakaway reform again in pursuit of Cadel Evans. Here we are, back further down. Armstrong has got control of this race now.
Vinokourov back in the fold there, but it's a hard day for the man who started in fifth, Francesco Mancebo. He needs to recover. Again here, remnants of that early morning group going over the top, those with the two Bouygues Telecom riders, Geslin and Jérôme Pinault. As we go a little bit further down, a lot of people, a lot of American flags out here, Phil, the Star-Spangled Banner, to celebrate the last Pyrenean mountain of Lance Armstrong's career.
Not the last big climb. We still have to climb to the airfield in Vendée, which is a couple of days away. A nasty finish to a stage race, believe me. But this is goodbye to the famous mountain change of France now for one Lance Armstrong. 6.5 times a Tour de France winner, waiting for Sunday.
Well, I would think it's probably 6.75 because we've only got 600 miles to go to the finish. And again, the King of the Mountains leader
needs the points. It's all category, remember, high points.
He needs the points, but I think also he needs the pride of showing that he is the best climber in this race, and that's why he wants to lead this very select group over the top of the climb. And this looks like a little bit of a comeback from Cloden, who's recovering further down the slopes.
Well, he'll easily get back up amongst it on the descent by the look of it, Andrews Cloden. As he now, there's Chris Horner going through. He was a part of the break and about to be picked up by Armstrong. Good place to get caught, because now they're together on the descent.
Well, it's a good place to get caught because now we've got a bit of a false flat on the first part of the descent down off the Col d'Aubisque, and then just a little bit of a kick of a kilometre or so up to the summit of the Col de Soulor, and then a long 20-kilometre descent down into the valley.
In the old days, the Col de Soulor was good enough for points in the King of the Mountains, if nothing this time.
Well, it depends which way you go over the Col de Soulor, but this way it's only really a climb of around about a couple of kilometres or so. But you can see the clouds here starting to drift down over the summit of this high Pyrenean mountain this afternoon.
Well, don't worry, there'll be no rain today, I say confidently. It's beautiful in Pau, and they'll leave the clouds on top of the mountain shortly as they race towards the Pau, one of the most visited cities of the Tour de France. Ullrich shaking, and Sastre, Cloden's got on the back end.
And Hincapie at the front. Hincapie will make a daredevil descent here, Phil, because he wants to be alongside a single rider. He wants to be with Lance Armstrong because he knows if Armstrong has a mechanical problem, he needs some help alongside him.
Unbelievable, George. And what happens if they regroup at the front without the rest of the sprinters? George could win again.
That would be quite remarkable as Hincapie leads him over the top. He knows this climb to perfection. And actually, here is another rider from Discovery Channel as well, riding up to the front. I didn't quite catch who that was as he went over 5 minutes. And another rider from Discovery Channel. They are all recovering here, and they're actually none of them very far behind at all. They want to be with the master. They want to be with the boss. They want to try and catch Lance Armstrong. And that is Jaroslav Popovic, and I'm quite convinced that he will make the junction on the descent. This is the next group. This is Jörg Jaks over on the right-hand side. That's Bobby Julich. That is Giuseppe Guerini. And it looks very much as that was Mario Ertz from Team Lotto. And that's a great ride by him, a man who in the past has been a very good climber.
Well, the clock is ticking away here. It looks like Christophe Moreau is coming through. His legs aren't so good these days. Nearly 6 minutes. He had a great ride through the Alps, but the old Pyrenees have hurt him. As he said, he was very tired after the ride at Plat d'Aix.
That's Oscar Sevilla with him. But we rejoin here the daredevil descent of this man. This, if we could just get a shot a little bit further back, is one of the most magnificent descents I think I know in the whole of the sport of cycling. There have been so many great photographs taken along this road, way back from the 1930s right up to now. Some of the greatest black and white photos exist of this descent. This is the descent off the Col de l'Aubisque, and just in the distance there, whenever we pick up slightly, you can see the Col de Soulor.
And we're just about to lose pictures, so stand by, or we switch to another camera. But you're right about the descent, Paul. But as you can see, it's a sheer drop from the left, so they've got to take it very carefully.
Armstrong leading them here. He won't be going too hard because he's actually got a very strong situation developing. I just noticed a couple of teammates moving up. Jaroslav Popovic was only about 30 seconds behind Lance Armstrong at the summit of that climb. And I think I caught sight also of Chechu Ribiera. So Armstrong very shortly could have 3 teammates alongside him.
And so he's in no hurry right now, which is very wise too. And there is Basso taking on food there. Remember what happened to Oscar Pereiro when he took on food a few days ago? He went off the road and disappeared, but fortunately he was fine.
Meanwhile, back here, back on the riders getting left behind here as we look at the groups, and we will see lots of groups coming up. This is 7 minutes and 21 seconds since we saw the leader Cadel Evans go over the top. I'm trying to have a look into that group. I just caught a quick glimpse of a cofidis rider in the group, and I was wondering whether or not it was going to. It's actually Sylvain Chavanel who's gone up there.
Peter Wynne just went through. He had a wonderful stage win on the first full weekend of the tour.
Looking to see if Stuart O'Grady might have made the contact, although I think these climbs, the way they've ridden them today, might be just a little bit too difficult for the Australian. A quick anecdote about this climb, Phil. The first part of this climb is actually a very dangerous, I should say this descent is very dangerous because there are no barriers at the side of the road, and if you go off the edge of the cliff here, there's an awful long way down.
Ouch.
A bit further back, there is Didier Roos coming up. There is Michael Rogers. So Michael Rogers, there is Stuart O'Grady moving up to the front. So O'Grady and Moncoutier. Team Cofidis have said that over the last 6 days of the Tour de France, they've been out and they've won themselves individual glory with a win going to their man David Moncoutier on the 14th of July, Bastille Day. But from now all the way up to the finish line in Paris, the race is for one man. The race is for a man by the name of Stuart O'Grady from Adelaide. And O'Grady, if he can get points today, he will get points ahead of Thor Hushovd and ahead of Robbie McEwen, who currently are quite a long way behind in the overall classification and a long way behind on today's stage. So the lone leader, Cadel Evans, former wearer of the pink jersey in the Giro d'Italia, started the day here at the Tour de France in 11th place overall, but today not only is he motivated by the sadness that has fallen over Australian cycling in the last 24 hours, but he's also motivated by trying to move himself up into a top position in the top 10 at the end of the day. So Cadel Evans, a special day for him this afternoon as he taps out this rhythm. He's now starting to ascend the Col de Soulor. Very shortly, he will then face up to a long 20-kilometre descent. Armstrong not taking any wrists at all, and that's why I think it will give a lot of riders here a very good chance to actually come back. He's having a little chat there with Ullrich. They don't want to take too many risks. They've had a big battle. Here comes Hincapie. He's back in the fold, and very shortly I think we will see 2 more riders from Discovery Channel reintegrating into this group. Basque flags flying high. Should really be the Australian flag for this man, who, let's not forget, way back in 1999 was elected the Mountain Bike Rider of the Year, and he was the winner on that occasion of the World Cup.
Boy, he's working hard, Paul. He's trying. He knows now he's got a chance, a real chance to win a stage.
He certainly has, and he will be hyper motivated. This is the slight incline. It only goes up for about a couple of kilometers to the summit of the Col de Soulon, and then he will start the downhill section of this part of the course, and he'll go down for approximately 20 kilometers down into the valley in the small town of Ferrières, and then he faces uphill to the long undulations down into the outskirts of Pau.
Well, he's doing his best. And there is the slopes of the chasers. They've started to kick up now. This is the Armstrong group at the moment, as they just in no interest at all just now. They're getting themselves reorganized down there, and just from those riders sneaking on the back, it might be George Hincapie getting on.
Well, Hincapie's already come to the front because I just saw him giving a bottle up to Lance Armstrong, but also coming on, I caught a sight of Jaroslav Popovic, who wasn't too far back, and I think that is Popovic over there on the left-hand side in the white jersey. So Armstrong surrounded by his henchmen once again. This is in a group a little bit further back. I think what's
nearly 12 minutes.
I think what's also quite interesting, in a group at around about 2 minutes to the yellow jersey, I caught sight of Stuart O'Grady.
So he knows if he can reach, he'll have a chance of scoring big points in the green jersey competition. That might finally see him win that competition. That's his ambition. He's finished 2nd and 3rd in Paris, but he's never won it, while the Australians Baden Cook and Robbie McEwen have. The Norwegian flags fly. Over 11 3/4 minutes has gone by as this group is topped. Champion of Spain is a 3rd man in the group, Juan Manuel Garate. Now you see them grabbing those newspapers, not for a read on the way down. It's up the jerseys and to stop the wind chilling their chest.
Well, Cadel Evans here, Phil, has got 4 minutes and 40 seconds advantage over the yellow jersey group of Lance Armstrong, and this is a man who, over his career, I think he's broken his collarbone on 7 separate occasions. And one occasion was actually before the start of the Tour de France a couple of years ago, when he was actually looking at this particular climb. He crashed on the descent and fractured his collarbone again. I don't think he'd do it now, because I think there's more metal in his collarbones than actual bone.
He's got to be careful it doesn't turn rusty when it rains, though. 12 minutes 25 seconds has passed now, and there is Thor Hushovd coming over the top. Don't think he'll catch the lead as being 12 minutes behind at this point.
But you notice he's got 2 teammates with him from Crédit Agricole, and what they will do is try and pace him back to another group, hopefully to try and catch Stuart O'Grady.
Well,
so we're looking here at Cadel Evans. He hasn't actually ridden very much mountain bike racing, many mountain bike races since 2001, but on that occasion he was actually 4th in the World Cross Country Championships, and he was 4th overall in the World Cup. But then he decided he wanted to concentrate a little bit more on road racing, and he switched across to ride professionally for Team Saeco in Italy. And that year he was actually the winner overall of the Tour of Austria. And so he's come across very successfully. He wore the pink jersey in the Giro d'Italia, and then everybody thought, well, this guy is going to be a great stage race rider. In the early part of the Tour de France, he said, I don't know about that. He said, I can't rival men like Armstrong and Ullrich and Basso in the big mountain passes, but today he certainly is doing that. He got himself a slight advantage early on because he got in a breakaway that escaped the field after just 19 kilometers. They built themselves up a lead of around about 6 minutes, but he's actually not lost too much of that advantage, because currently he's about 4 minutes and 40 seconds ahead of the yellow jersey group of Armstrong. This is Chechu Rubiera. So Armstrong will feel a lot more comfortable now because he's got his henchmen all around him. Chechu Rubiera first. Right behind him is Jaroslav Popovic. As we go back to 40 minutes in arrears, this is Thomas Voeckler. And Thomas Voeckler, just out of interest, the man who wore the yellow jersey last year in the Tour de France for 10 days, is currently 3 hours and 1 minute behind Lance Armstrong in the overall classification. Now, if you put that into a linear measurement, that's 120 kilometers, or 75 miles back. But he has tried. He's been actually in the breakaway on a number of occasions, and there's a little competition which is organized by one of the French newspapers, and it records who has been in the breakaway at the head of the race for the longest number of kilometers. Thomas Voeckler is about 4th in that competition. He's been away for around about 330 kilometers, unfortunately this year without the success of 12 months ago. Looking further back to see who is in these groups. And what we have to look at is to see the position, see if we can spot Robin McEwen. I've been looking for McEwen. Looks like a rider there from Sonia Duval. I'm looking to see if I can see there he is. That's Robin McEwen. So Robin McEwen is 15 minutes behind. He's around about 3 minutes behind the position of Thor Hushovd. It will have to be a very special chase if Robin McEwen is going to get himself back into this event.
Well, here comes more onto the back group as well, because that is Acevedo's rejoin now. This is a steady regrouping now. This bunch is getting bigger. There's been no determination at all, Paul. This is ordering well for Cadel at the moment. Out front, this group is getting steadily bigger.
It's getting steadily bigger, and Armstrong, I feel, will be getting steadily more comfortable, because now in this group with him, he's got Acevedo, he's got Hincapie, he's got Popovic and Chechu Rubiera, so he doesn't have to worry too much. The team is rising to the occasion once again.
Indeed they are, as the pacemaking continues here. Armstrong is watching life just come around him. He's got 4 of his teammates back now. Rasmussen consolidating his lead in the King of the Mountains, thinking that, well, he's still in 3rd place for Paris. He knows that Ullrich has got to attack him, and if he doesn't lose time, it'll go to the time trial on Saturday to decide the final places behind Lance Armstrong.
Although Armstrong has not done anything with great flair or panache in this year's Tour de France, as he has done in the past, he's actually looking very comfortable at the top end of the overall classification, 2 minutes and 46 seconds ahead of Ivan Basso. But I have to say, his opponents have shown more panache and style than in previous years, because certainly Team CSC and T-Mobile have really gone out and attacked him at every opportunity that presented itself. And
made a lot of admirers because of it. 58 kilometers to go down to the finish in Po now. It's not all downhill either. Well, Armstrong, as we look at the start of stage 16, at this point in his last 2 tours, he was half as much behind in the lead, because he was 42nd in the lead 2 years ago at this stage of the race, and last year he was only a minute and a half. Well, this year he's 2 3/4, so for him everything's going according to plan. It couldn't be going better. Pyrenees saying goodbye today on the descent here now of the Col de Soulor. That was Pereiro chasing in 2nd place.
Well, Pereiro's chasing. There's a rider just in front of him. The race situation tells us that Cadel Evans is leading ahead of Pereiro, and then a little bit further back there are 2 other riders, Zandio and Mazzolini. Then it's a little bit further back to Marcos Serrano. So I wonder if Pereiro here is about to make the junction with Cadel Evans. Now that would indicate that he has gone down this hill like an absolute maniac. These are now the slopes of the Col de Soulor. This is Andreas Kloden on the front, 2nd overall in the Tour de France last year. Mancebo has recovered. Huge crowds out here for this final big Pyrenean climb of this year's Tour de France, but there are still an awful lot of very difficult roads to go before we get to the finish, and the most difficult, I would say, would have to be the mountain top finish in Mende. On that occasion, well up in the Massif Central, we actually finished on an aerodrome, and that's where back in, I think it was 1995, Laurent Jalabert was the winner for France on Bastille Day. Now this is, in fact, Pereiro has come back and he has rejoined Cadel Evans. So now we're looking at 2 riders at the head of the race, Cadel Evans and Oscar Pereiro.
Cadel Evans, Oscar Pereiro are together, and the Cadel doesn't look as though he's enjoying the descent quite as much as Oscar. He's just come up, by the way, Pereiro, and got up behind Cadel. Now, Cadel would do well to go with this guy, because this guy is on fire in this tour, and every breakaway he's tried so far, he hasn't got the results he's deserved.
Well, in the back of his mind, Cadel is probably thinking back to when he actually crashed on this descent, when he was actually making a reconnaissance of the Col de Aubisque and the Col de Soulor for the Tour de France back in 2002. He should be a great descender, because, after all, the man we're looking at the front of the race, Cadel Evansville, was the mountain biker of the year and the winner of the Mountain Bike World Cup.
Well, let's hope that he doesn't crash this time, as Eddie Mazzolini, a bit further back down the road, continues his descent with Zandio.
Well, we're looking here at the next move here, and in fact Eddie Mazzolini has rejoined Cadel Evans, so he too has made a daredevil descent. We could be looking at the bottom of the Col de Soulor here of a group of 3 to 5 riders. Cadel is not taking any risks at all. I'm not sure that that's a very wise move by Oscar Pereiro, trying to ride off the front on his own, because there is an awful long way from the bottom of the descent. In fact, once we reach the small town of Ferrières, the riders then will be facing up to around about 50 kilometers to go to the finish. And that is a long individual time trial. Much better to do it in the company of a couple of riders like Cadel Evans and Eddie Mazzolini, who is a man always on form. It's Bobby Julich on the back here. Julich, I think, having one of his best tours in recent years. He started the day in 16th place overall, 19 minutes back.
Well, I think this is probably the best thing that could have happened to Cadel, to get somebody with the power of Mazzolini. They've got to hold on to Oscar Pereiro, but they should get him back on the flat.
Well, Oscar Pereira is just around the corner, but again, you know, Cadel probably backing off a fraction. You know, these are very dangerous descents, very technical, tricky descents here on the slopes of the Pyrenees. And as you can see, again, a little bit of blackness in the road every now and again. When you see that small amount of blackness, that is normally the tar which is starting to melt. And if you try to put your brakes on in a situation like this, very often, and we've seen this happen a number of times in the past, a rider can actually lose his back wheel and go down very hard, and nobody in a breakaway wants to have that happen.
Well, again, nothing more serious than just a general descent here by the peloton. They are still way down at the moment, 5.5 minutes or so. They pulled back, though, from 7.5 at the bottom of the Aubisque, but they've lost a bit of time again because they haven't really chased that breakaway, which is a bit unusual, because when you think you've got Mazzolini and Evans up there now, two riders who've got good high overall positions in the Tour.
Just to let you into a nice little feeling, as a non-climber, Phil, when you get to this point of the Tour de France, I know guys like Robin McEwen, Thor Hushovd, and the other guys who've suffered over the mountain passes are now breathing a sigh of relief, because they know they've almost got Paris on the horizon.
I'm not sure Robbie's over the Aubisque yet.
So this is Andries Kloden, and we're looking at a massive lead still for Cadel Evans over this group. Cadel Evans around about 5 minutes, and funnily enough, the team on the front who are chasing him down is the team with the pink jerseys, T-Mobile, and he actually last year was a member of this squad, although he did say to me at the start of the year when I saw him in the Jacobs Creek Tour Down Under, he said he felt so much happier being on Team Lotto. He got a lot of Aussie mates alongside him. He'd got Robin McEwen, he'd got Nick Gates, and he just felt a lot more comfortable in the team than he did last year with T-Mobile. Oh, Oscar Pereiro's had a problem, and can't see exactly what happened there to Oscar Pereiro, and it could well be that his tire was starting to turn around. Now, what can happen in a situation like this? These, and the majority of professional riders, still use what are known as tubular tires. These are the tires that are actually stuck onto the rim. And if you come down a descent like this for a long time, when you're using your brakes, it actually heats up the rim, and that can start to melt the glue that keeps the tire on. So we caught a brief glimpse there of something happening to Oscar Pereiro, and nothing has come through yet on race radio to indicate exactly what that was. So this is Kloden. This is a beautiful place for the Tour de France to come through here this afternoon. Kloden whipping up the pace at the front, because he realizes that Cadel Evans is a danger in the overall classification. He started just around about 12 minutes and 57 seconds behind Armstrong, but a 5-minute advantage today would move him up into 5th or 6th place. Well, Pereiro, it would appear, actually had a flat tire, so he's changed the flat tire. This information coming over race radio, and he is starting to come back to the two leaders. So this will make for a very strong group. Pereiro very unlucky to have a flat tire at that point.
It was indeed, and well, sometimes you need luck if you're in the chase group.
You certainly do. He is apparently, according to race radio, coming back. I wouldn't be surprised to see him rejoin these two riders very shortly. He was the man who was going down this descent the fastest.
Oh, he'll come back, because he is clearly the better descender of the three. And these two are descending fast, but with a little bit of caution. Cadel Evans obviously not with the confidence I thought he would have had on the way down. He's broken his collarbone perhaps just one too many times.
Yeah, and he's had it repaired a number of times too, so he's got an awful lot of metal in there. And probably when he goes through the airports these days, he has to carry a piece of paper explaining why he sets off the alarms.
Just look at this here, Paul. This looks like Cloden going away. He's just freewheeling off the front. He's making no conscious effort. In fact, he's realised he's gone too far off the front, I think.
Well, he's not a danger to Armstrong, and
No.
Armstrong, I think, wants his guys who are in the second, third and fourth position in this line to take this descent carefully. He knows that the only thing really that can rob him of victory in the Tour de France this year, Phil, is an accident, and he doesn't want to fall off at this stage.
Well, he's ridden. We could see the caution today, both on the climbs when he rode out the sight of the leaders, so he could see where he was racing, and on the descent here, he has just freewheeled and made no effort whatsoever. And this is where the body of the race is. 5 minutes 30, the latest time gap now, which is Lance Armstrong to the two leaders in effect, Evans and Mazzolini. Pereiro, we think, will come back up. Cloden's just freewheeling away from them right now.
Well, currently, if we were to stop the race right here and now, that would put Cadel Evans up into 6th place in the overall classification. And I think that's seriously what he's looking at this afternoon. It's great to see him riding like this, taking the corners a little bit more carefully, but we're still waiting to see if we're going to get the comeback of Oscar Pereiro, and I think he can't be all that far behind.
Well, the best ever finish, Paul,
It is.
by an Australian. Here he comes. Best ever finish by an Australian. It was Phil Anderson. He twice finished 5th in the Tour de France in 1982 and again in 1985.
Yeah, Phil Anderson, one of the greatest cyclists, road cyclists that Australia has ever put together, and it really is amazing whenever you get a chance to look at Phil Anderson's pedigree, because he won nearly all of the top events in the world: the Tour of Switzerland, the Tour of Romandy, the points classification at the Giro d'Italia, and then throw in a few one-day races as well, like the Grand Prix of Frankfurt, the Championship of Zurich. Phil Anderson certainly was the greatest cyclist, and paved the way for all of the Australian cyclists who are now racing on the European circuit, and I suppose laying down the foundations for what has been a record participation by Australians in the Tour de France this year, with 10 Aussies at the start, and still actually 10 Aussies in the race. This is the next group on the road. And in fact, no, this is still the leading group, and another rider has joined on the descent. Xavier Zandio of Il Baleares there, wearing number 39. He too has made a fairly dramatic descent. Now this is all boding well for the breakaway this afternoon, because with 4 men, they've got a very good chance of actually moving clear and surviving off the front end of the peloton, because I'm not sure that these guys are convinced that they want to lay out the energy to chase down that 4-man group. On the back there, shaken a little bit. For there's Chris Horner. He's managed to come back to the yellow jersey group as well, number 86. He was 200 meters away from winning a stage the other day. That's Horner just on the back in the yellow shorts. He was caught on the roads down into Digne-les-Bains. No, it wasn't Digne-les-Bains, it was the next day. In fact, it was on the road into Montpellier. He was caught just 200 meters to go to the finish by the charging main field, and Romain McEwen overtook him, but Horner on that occasion actually still managed to hold on and get himself 10th place. That's an indication of how close to the line he was actually caught. So not far away from Ferrière. Looking here at a 4-man leading group, Team Phonak coming up, and they're now looking at the possibility of a little bit of revenge for getting beaten just 48 hours ago.
Oscar Pereiro is now back. It's a nice working group, that, Paul. I think sometimes punctures happen for the best, because he's put 4 strong men together. They brought up the other rider too, Zandio.
Well, I think it would have been more sensible for Oscar Pereiro to stay in contact with those riders, Phil, because if they're a 4-man group, I think they've got a much better chance of surviving, because we're still looking at around about, well, just inside of 50 kilometers to go, and that's around about an hour and 15 minutes of racing. This group, on the other hand, is seriously starting to swell up. There's no real reason for any of the top contenders in the overall classification to try and chase it down, although maybe Francisco Mancebo's team might like to, because he is going to be threatened a fraction by Cadel Evans in the break.
Well, Cadel is 11th overall today at 12 minutes and 57 seconds. Currently, they're saying the lead is around about, let's say, 6 minutes. It's just a little bit less than 6 minutes. That would give him 6 minutes off his overall, and that's going to put him right up in 5th place overall, thereabouts. That's a huge jump today. Now, the best ever position by an Australian cyclist at Paris in the Tour de France was Phil Anderson. Rode 13 tours, finished every one of them, and he actually finished 5th on 2 occasions overall, and that's the position that Cadel is aiming at.
Yeah, and Phil rode the Tour on 13 occasions. He was
did.
a very tough competitor, and he was also a very important part in the early career of Lance Armstrong, because Armstrong took advice from two old professionals. And I say old, they were a bit younger than me, but obviously Sean Yates, the British rider who wore the yellow jersey in the Tour de France, and Phil Anderson, who knew almost every point that you had to be at the front when it came down to the one-day races that Anderson himself was also very successful in.
That's right. Well, in his first season with Motorola, in fact, Phil Anderson won 15 races, and that kept the company in sponsorship for a number of years to follow after that.
So this is the yellow jersey group, which is now seriously starting to swell in numbers, and one man making a big chase at around about a minute and a half in a large group is Stuart O'Grady. And although there are 4 riders off the front, O'Grady would be looking to try and get himself some points in this stage today, because he is only 14 points away from taking the green jersey competition away from Thor Hushovd. Hushovd was a long way behind at the top of the Col de Aubisque, around about 15 minutes behind, but 10 minutes behind the yellow jersey group. And he was around about 5 minutes behind Stuart O'Grady's group.
Well, Pereiro wearing the red number there today as the most aggressive rider on the last stage, which was 2 days ago, of course, before the rest day yesterday. He was very upset he didn't win that stage to Pla d'Day, because morally he was the winner. He'd done all of the pacemaking. He'd gone away from a group of 14. In the end, only George Hincapie could go with him. Hincapie was a teammate of Armstrong, never once helped him all the way to the finish, and then out-sprinted Pereiro at the line. And his team are very upset with Hincapie and Discovery Channel, and so too was their manager. But that's professional racing. Hincapie got the flowers and Pereiro got nothing.
Well, I'm sorry about that, Phil, but it is very much the law of the jungle when it comes down to that. And I think every professional bike rider dreams of being in a breakaway and being told by the team manager to sit on, because you're actually defending the position of the overall leader. And that's exactly what George Hincapie did. And at the end of the day, he won that climb because he was the freshest man in the break, not necessarily the best climber, although he's been climbing pretty well today.
He got back. He yo-yoed a bit today, George did, but he got back on, and that's good for him. This is the breakaway somewhere in between, I think. Cedric Vasseur, the remnants of the break. If this bunch get back up to the leaders, then we do have a different race in our hands. This was the original breakaway of Fletcher, Geslin, Vasseur, Pinot, Gilbert, Terpin. Gone from it, of course, is Rodriguez. He's now gone right back on the climb. But there is still a chance they might reintegrate with those 4 front runners.
A lot of chasing still to be done. They're around about, well, that group is actually around about 2.5 minutes behind the leading group of 4. And there are still 2 riders caught in no man's land, Marcos Serrano and Jörg Ludwig. It's a big chase still.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye out for those.
So at the town of Ferrières, at 50 kilometers to go, this is the second group on the road. Just looking around the corner there. And this is actually the main field. This is the group which contains the yellow jersey, and riders are coming back all of the time. Just getting himself onto the back there. A rather dramatic little chase around the corners there was Francis Mouret. And also trying to get up to the front there. You can see this is a man who was regarded as the big favorite here for the Il Baleares team, and just getting onto the black there, Vladimir Carpets. Carpets actually crashed in the first kilometer of the race here this afternoon, and he was dropped on the first climb of the day, and he was regarded before the start of this race as the leader of the team alongside Francisco Manceba, because he was the winner last year of the white jersey of the best young rider. So we're now looking at a situation where we've got a leading group of 4. 4 riders are Cadel Evans, Oscar Ferreiro in the yellow and green jersey of Phonak. The next man is Eddie Mazzolini, and the man just sitting on the back there, 39, Xavier Zandio, which is rather interesting, because this man Zandio has never in his life actually won a professional race, even though he's been professional since the year 2000. But we have talked about him on a number of occasions here at the Tour. Cadel looking to emulate the performances of the great Phil Anderson in the Tour de France for Australia. Anderson finished in the top 10 of the Tour de France on, I think, about 5 separate occasions. He finished 9th, he finished 2 times 10th, and he finished twice in 5th place overall. Once in 1982 and once in 1985. He was a great professional bike rider who put in a lot of performances and was a member of the Motorola squad back in 1991, and his victories that season in races like the Tour of the Mediterranean and the Tour of Sicily, actually encouraged Motorola to stay in the sport for 6 years. And Motorola happened to be the home of a young man by the name of Lance Armstrong, who turned professional after the Olympic Games of Barcelona back in 1992. In the back here, a rider from CSC looking for the team car to come forward. I think that was Bobby Jewlett taking on board drinks for the rest of the squad. I think we might see in a few moments, we might see 1 or 2 other teams coming forward to start chasing down that group of Cadel Evans.
So it's Lance +4, all in control of the peloton, no drive going on. Chris Horner looks as though he's got a flat tyre.
Well, it's a good time to have it because the pressure is not on that much in this group, and if he does get a quick change, he'll be very shortly back into the main field. I think Armstrong just taking these descents nice and gently. He doesn't want to take too many risks. After all, every kilometre that ticks by, he's getting himself just that little bit closer to Paris. But what he's doing here also is putting pressure on the other teams of Il Baleares, Team Gerolsteiner and Team Phonak, because in fact at the moment Cadel Evans is actually threatening the position of Mancebo, Leipheimer and Landis in the overall race.
42 kilometres, 26 miles, whichever way you look at it, it's the same distance on the way down, and Zandio, Evans, Pereiro, Mazzolini are still the 4 riders. And there's the Phonak team car now to give them a complete reappraisal of what is happening behind. And I think they'll say, look, Lance Armstrong's bunch are not chasing you. You've got a real chance to succeed here. Now this is Jörg Ludwig, and he's also got with him now Domenico Cantuan, who must have been
Serrano.
Yeah, the guy that was. Is this Serrano coming through?
This is Serrano on the front. That is Ludwig in second place for Domino Vacanze. These guys are being caught halfway across the gap, and they're currently around about 1 minute and 52 down, so they've still got a long chase to try and reintegrate that leading group of 4 riders. And then there's a group a little bit further back of about 8 riders who are basically the survivors of that early morning breakaway. 11 riders initially escaped the race after just 19 kilometers and built up a big lead, and it was Cadel Evans who was the major aggressor on the slopes of the climb. The biggest ride really was done by Oscar Pereiro, because he rode across on the Col de l'Aubisque, caught the breakaway, went straight by and caught Cadel Evans.
Serrano here, he was also coming across. He was never in the early morning breakaway, and he never got across. He was with Pereiro, and he's still chasing him. Pereiro's now driving at the front. Ludwig is trying to get across. He's had a good day in the breakaway because he was first over the top of the Marie Blanc, which means he's on good form. He was second over the Col de Cher. He lost his ground on the climb of the Aubisque, but he still might get back. And if he does get back, it wouldn't be unheard of for him to win the stage. So they've still got to chase back at the moment. They're timed at around about 1 minute and 52 seconds behind the leaders.
You can see Team Discovery just basically controlling affairs. This is Salvatore Commesso who's reintegrated the group. This group now, Phil, is starting to get very large, and it's looking, it was almost going the way we expected, a 50 to 70 man group on this descent of the Col de l'Aubisque, but we didn't expect to see a breakaway with Cadel Evans
and these boys are not racing, Paul, they're just getting themselves to the finish. There's a good chance that breakaway will work now.
I'm pretty sure it's got an excellent chance of surviving. They're still holding on to a very big lead over the main field. In fact, the advantage has gone up to around about 6.5 minutes.
People like Levi Leipheimer, Floyd Landis, Michael Rasmussen, and indeed Vinokurov are going to get worried now, because Cadel Evans is probably going to take time out of them big time today.
Well, actually, at 6.5 minutes, Cadel Evans is now starting to threaten the position of Jan Ullrich in the overall classification. 12:57 was Cadel Evans' deficit at the start of the day, but only 6.5 minutes behind Jan Ullrich. So I would think as we get a little bit closer to the finish, we're going to see that the team of T-Mobile are going to start whipping up the pacemaking. It's Cadel Evans, Oscar Pereiro, moving up is Zandio and Eddie Mazzolini. Cadel Evans is riding here like a man possessed, and this is a big sprint here for a few time bonus seconds. Oscar Pereiro is going to take the maximum there, but is he? Because Cadel Evans is trying to get it as well. Pereiro gets the 6 points there, followed by Cadel Evans, and there is Zandio getting in 3rd place. Eddie Mazzolini not too worried at all about this. So that was a big battle there, and Oscar Pereiro seriously wanted those 6 seconds. and he thinks maybe at the end of the day that might be important for him, especially in his race in the overall classification. Pereiro at the start of the day in 17th place, but the best man in this leading group is, of course, Cadel Evans, the rider from Team Lotto in the red, black and white strip there, and he wears number 44. This is a difficult mountain stage here this afternoon from Morenz to Pau, with the big climbs behind them. As we look here, that's the first chasing group on the road, and this is Marcos Serrano. He is with Ludovic, and actually they're not that far behind. They're around about 1 minute and 20 seconds, because that sign we saw there was the sign which indicated that sprint point, which we've just seen the leading group of 4 go through, is only 1 kilometer away. So they're doing a fairly good job here, trying to get themselves across the gap. So Pereira gets himself 6 points in 6 seconds. These two riders are going to have to do something special if they're going to catch up. So this is the town that we're coming into for this final sprint of the day. This is Arthez-d'Azon, and it's exactly 40 kilometers to go to the finish, or 25 miles. So that leaves around about an hour of racing on some very undulating roads into the outskirts of Pau. We've been through a couple of departments this afternoon. We started the stage off in the Atlantic Pyrenees, went through into the High Pyrenees, and now we're going to finally finish in the same department we started, or as they say in French, the Pyrénées Atlantiques. This young man we're looking at here, Phil Zandio, we've actually seen him on the attack on a number of occasions since the start of the Tour de France. Got himself 3rd place in that sprint point there. Yep. Been a professional since 2000. He's always been with Venesto. Hasn't won a race yet, but he's getting there. But we've talked about him as well. We've talked about him a lot. He's been on the attack on a number of occasions. It won't be too long before he gets himself a victory. He's actually not too far away from here, because he was born in Pamplona.
It's not too far away. Well, at least he shares the same hometown as one Miguel Indurain, who was 41 during this year's Tour de France. He's not racing, of course, now, but he did win it 5 times. And 5 times straight. Lance Armstrong became the first to make it 6 in a row, and looking like it will be 7 in a row.
This is Sylvain Chavanel just sitting at the back there for Team Cofidis. This puts a lot of pressure. You see, Gerolsteiner have come to the front to start riding now, because Cadel Evans right now is putting Levi Leipheimer's position in a very dangerous position overall, but also with a 6.5 minute advantage, Phil, they're actually almost threatening the position of Jan Ullrich.
In which case then we'll see the mauve jerseys of T-Mobile also cut to the chase very shortly. Meanwhile, up front, life is pretty calm. 1:37 to the first chasers, 2:30 to the second chasers, and 7 minutes 6 seconds to Lance Armstrong's group. So things are looking good. I can't see any group bridging 7 minutes when they've only got about 36 kilometers to race the finish.
Well, the leading group have got 36 kilometers to go, but in fact the main field have not yet got to the sprint point, which is at 40 kilometers to go. So we're looking at a separation on the road of around about 6 kilometers between the leading group of 4 and the main peloton, which contains the yellow jersey and most of the favorites.
It's looking good for the 4 riders now, but there is a big group chasing. Apart from the 2 at 1:35, at 2.5 minutes, there are 6 other riders trying to get across. The original part of the original breakaway, there's Cadel Evans left on the Aubisque.
This is Jörg Ludwig on the front. He's a rider who was very dominant in the early part of the season. He rode a very good Pyrenees. He was on the attack on the road down into Cannes. In fact, he was caught out on the final descent by a man by the name of Postuma. Postuma went on to take the win on that occasion. Lots of riders now very prepared to come to the front and set the pace. Peter Weening, he's moving up for Team Rabobank, and they're all very worried, I think, about the position of Cadel Evans in that leading group of riders, and that's why we're seeing a number of teams come forward, because Cadel Evans today could see himself threatening even 4th placed Jan Ullrich in the overall standings, and that really would be quite a remarkable turn up for the books. Looking down the line, there's Leonardo Piccoli. That's Laurent Brochard, the French champion, going through there. Looking further back, Bradley McGee had a very difficult time at the start of the stage. He was one of the first riders dropped on the third category climb of the day. This is turning out to be rather a large group here as we head down to around about 40 kilometers to go for the main field. See, Levi Leipheimer has asked his teammates to come to the front and whip up the pace because he doesn't want to lose his 6th place in the overall classification. Leipheimer a little bit further back on the defensive here because of that fabulous move by Cadel Evans on the slopes of the Col d'Aubisque. Salvatore Camesso, number 153, coming backwards, and also moving to the back of the cars there. That was Sandy Cassar of FDJ. This is going to be a long, tough chase here. I didn't see Stuart O'Grady coming back to the group. He wasn't that far away at the top of the Col de l'Aubisque, and I thought he just might have managed to get himself into this group, a day where he would see himself having a fairly good chance of stealing back a few points on Thor Hushovd. Hushovd, the leader of the green jersey points classification. That is a classification which is for the most consistent rider on every individual stage, and I think that's going to be a great battle over the last few stages, because it's between Thor Hushovd, Robbie McEwen and Stuart O'Grady.
At the moment, Paul, I make the leaders 7 kilometers ahead of the peloton.
That's an awful long margin, and it's actually a number of different teams starting to whip up the pace on the front end of the peloton, and that's because Cadel Evans has made the move of the Tour here. He's looking at moving himself up into the top 5 places overall, but he's now threatening the position of a large number of teams. This is the sprint point, and once they cross this sprint point, it's 40 kilometers to go to the finish. This is the man who won the stage into Gérardmer, Peter Weening on the front, whipping up the pace for Team Rabobank. They must really be worried even about the position of Michael Rasmussen in a race like this, because that 6.5 minutes lead for that leading quartet really is quite remarkable.
Well, Rabobank also getting interested in the chase back at the moment. They've no real reason that I can think of, because they haven't got a man up there at the moment in the overall. Well, one more talk about, of course, they've got Michael Rasmussen. I keep forgetting, because he's worn his polka dot jersey ever since the mountain started. He is the Rabobank, and they've got to ride now, because first of all, we started with Cadel Evans endangering the roundabout, the whereabouts of Floyd Landis and Levi Leipheimer, the 2 Americans. Then he went on to Francesco Mancebo. Then he crept into the realms of Jan Ullrich, who is 4th. Now he's creeping into the realms of Michael Rasmussen. Very shortly, the whole field will be chasing.
Well, no, I don't think anybody expected quite this turnaround. We knew there was going to be a battle for the final positions in the overall classification, and for a lot of riders, it was the last chance to really make up big chunks of time. Cadel Evans has taken the advantage of that this afternoon by getting himself into that early breakaway, and then inspired the move he made, I have to say, Phil, on the slopes of the Col de l'Aubisque. As we see, these are the two chasers. These guys are in 5th and 6th position on the road. That's Jörg Ludwig at the front in the Domino Vacanti colours. Behind him, Marco Serrano for Liberty Seguros. Liberty Seguros not really having a lot to shout about after this year's Tour.
No, they're not, but look at the fine tempo riding there from the Domino Vacanti rider, who's first over the top of the Marie Blanc. Well, up there in that breakaway is, in fact, Cadel Evans. They don't win too many stages. I think I can name them: Robbie McEwen, Stuart O'Grady, Baden Cook, Bradley McGee, Neil Stevens, Phil Anderson, have all won stage of the Tour de France. Anderson was the man for the overall. McGee's worn the yellow jersey as well as Phil Anderson. So too as O'Grady and Robbie McEwen these days. But this man could be pushing himself up into the top 5 overall if this race can stay just like it is.
Well, if you just look at that, there is a certain amount of panic at the front end of the group. Not on the Team Discovery channel, because they're the team who are actually in the driving seat. They've got the biggest advantage over everybody, with Lance Armstrong starting the day 2:46 ahead of Basso, around about 6 minutes ahead of Jan Ullrich. So he's got a little bit of tactical time to play with.
Information from Domino Vacanti. Oh, and a drink for Jörg Ludwig. Still a little time to go to catch up for those two. I mean, it's certainly looking now as though the 4 leaders might hold off the rest for at least the sprint finish.
This looks like the man who had a rather nasty incident in the early part of the race, Andrei Kashekin. He actually got hit in the nose accidentally by a spectator's balloon. They've got these big, long, air-filled balloons that the spectators wave at the riders, and somebody was just a little bit over-enthusiastic, and Kashekin was going up the first climb of the day, the first big climb of the day, the Col de Marie Blanc, and he got whacked in the nose, and that started a very nasty nosebleed. That seems to have subsided, and he's got himself back into the race. This is Shaken. He seems to be okay. He's talking there to Axel Merckx. A lot of work to do with the 4 leaders. Serrano taking up last position there. He'll try and recover a little bit and then start to work with the group. But the four leaders here are actually currently seeing this race turn very much to their advantage, although the presence of Cadel Evans in it is forcing the front end of the main field to really whip up the pacemaking.
Well, we're running out on these beautiful country roads here now, bound for Pau. The big climbs are behind. We do have a fourth category climb to come. We'll top that with 19.5 kilometers to race, the Pyrenees Pile. And, well, Cadel's a good climber. He might try to go alone there. He's still got the legs. This is Ludwig. He's also been picked up.
He decided to sit up and wait. I think that was the most sensible thing to do, because they were riding basically just about 45 seconds in front of this group. Now they can all start to work together, and that gives them more of a chance of making a dent into the advantage of the four leaders. But the four leaders, Phil, are all four very strong men. Riders like Eddie Mazzolini, we've seen finish high overall in the Giro d'Italia. Of course, Cadel Evans is on fire this afternoon. But in the main field, there's a certain amount of panic from Gerolsteiner and T-Mobile, who can see their places being threatened.
This is Peter Weening, who rode so well the other day and got the stage victory when he outsprinted Andreas Kloten at the end in Gerardmer. And now the main field, most of them not really interested, but they're going to be pulled along now by the panic of the domestics on the top teams.
No panic at all for Lance Armstrong, just sitting there wearing number 1. The majority of his team have come back to surround him and protect him at the front end of this field as we now go through the small town of Ney. This is for the four leaders, and that small town that they're going through of Ney is 29.5 kilometers to go to the finish. They've got 2 minutes 11 seconds over the big group of chasers. Cadel Evans here realizing this afternoon he has got a very big chance of moving high up in the overall classification to join a man who has finished 5 times in the top 10 from Australia, Phil Anderson, who finished twice in 10th place, once in 9th place, and twice in 5th place. And Anderson was also the winner of the white jersey, the best young rider. Anderson was probably the greatest road racing cyclist that Australia ever produced, and he was certainly one of the foreign legion who came across to Europe and raced without that much support. And as a lot of those riders in Phil Anderson's era had to expatriate himself from Australia for many, many long months. But at least he paved the way for all the other Australians who followed. As we look here, this group now is the chasing group. This is the second group on the road, and we're looking at about 8 riders in this group. So there's 4 riders in front, 8 riders in this group. So the main field will be looking to contest around about 13th place. On the big mountain stages, by the way, there are less points for the green jersey points classification. Only the first 15 riders can get points. So even if Stuart O'Grady has recovered and managed to get into this group, he's currently actually not looking at winning too many points on the stage. Just looking at the back, that's Chris Horner. A little bit further forward, that's Iban Mayo. That's Jaimar Zubeldia. Zubeldia in 13th place overall. He's the second best Spanish rider behind Francisco Mancebo. Moving a bit further forward, that's riding for the Liquigas team there.
Well, it's all down to the teammates who have still got legs of Rabobank, Gerolsteiner and T-Mobile to try and reduce this advantage of Cadel Evans in particular. I think half the world want Pereiro to win. He carries the red number there, the most aggressive rider to the Plat d'Aix on Sunday, but didn't get the win. Hincapie did. He's at it again, Pereiro. I don't know how many times he's been on the attack this tour, Paul, but not one time has it resulted in a win for him yet.
Been very aggressive. He's looked for the moves on a number of occasions, and mostly on the big mountain stages. Let's not forget, this guy is a very talented athlete. He finished 10th overall in the Tour de France last year, having lost 5.5 minutes in the team time trial. He battled his way back up through the field, and this year at the start of the Tour he was one of the 3 leaders of Team Phonak alongside Santiago Botero, who was actually having a very bad day here in the Tour, and of course Floyd Landis, who's currently in 7th place in the overall standings.
Well, at the moment, if it were to end right now, Cadel Evans will be sitting in 6th place overall in the Tour de France, displacing Levi Leipheimer by just a few seconds. And that is why Leipheimer's Gerolsteiner team are starting to ride at the front of the peloton. because take off another couple of minutes and we're looking at less than a minute, in fact, and we'll be challenging Jan Ullrich's time, and that's 4th place overall.
And that's why there's major panic on board in the yellow jersey group, and the panic is not coming from Lance Armstrong. He's not too worried at all, but it is coming on board for most of the other riders in front of Cadel Evans in the overall classification. They brought it back a fraction, but not all that much, because between the leading group of 4 and the main field there is a 6-minute difference, and this group is caught halfway across at 2 minutes and 12 seconds.
Well, this is the in-between group still working together. Ludovic Turpin is the rider at the back. He had a puncture when he was in the original break on the Marie Blanc, and he actually caught them up again. He paid for it a little later on the Aubisque, but there he is, and he looks as though he's really suffering right now, but he's still there, and he's only got about 15 miles to go, which is 24 kilometers.
Cedric Basso in there as well. You can see the rider from Contenders, a former wearer of the yellow jersey in the Tour de France, and of course a man who has seen great glory on the roads of the Tour de France.
Look at this now, T-Mobile having to chase now to save Ullrich's 4th place from Cadel Evans.
So Steinhauser coming to the front to set the pace. This is Peter Wiening. This a lot of people believe is going to be a star of the future for Team Rabobank. It's his 5th year with Team Rabobank. He started off actually on the Rabobank development squad. Rabobank has got a very good sponsorship program. They sponsor a lot of development squads to look and try and develop their own Dutch cyclists for the future. They support women's racing, they support mountain biking, and of course they support a very strong track squad as well. As we look at the 4 leaders now, that banner just in the distance is the 25 kilometer to go banner, and you can see these riders still holding on to around about 2 minutes and 15 seconds lead over a group of 8 chasers, and 6 minutes lead still over the main field.
Well, I know it's pretty late in Australia right now, Paul, but the Australians are going to be screaming at the television set because Cadel Evans has been simply brilliant today. I know the reason he's inspired by the terrible tragedy which has hit Australian cycling in the last 48 hours with the accident which has happened amongst the top women's cycling team in Germany, and the loss tragically of Amy Safe, or Amy Gillette as her name now is, recently married, and our sympathies go out for everybody involved in that, because it is a terrible situation. Cadel said he couldn't say the words befitting, so he said he'd give his answer on the stage. I think he has.
And that's the only way to do it. If you're a professional bike rider, the only way to do the talking sometimes is with your legs, and that is, I think, why Cadel Evans is hyper motivating here this afternoon to do something very special, because it's a dark cloud that really has descended on Australian cycling in the last 24 hours. And I certainly wouldn't like to be in the shoes of a man by the name of Gary Sutton, who must be having probably the worst days of his life.
Absolutely. We're looking now at the peloton in the Tour de France, freewheeling and being driven, in fact, by the teammates of the riders in 3rd, 4th and 5th position and 6th position in the overall classification, because the Australian Cadel Evans is now racing along the road with a chance tonight of possibly going up into 4th place in the Tour de France, and they're trying to prevent it here. These are the teams represented, and they are giving it everything they've got left.
Well, everybody coming forward here to set up the pace because of the fact Cadel Evans is threatening a podium position here, because at the end of the day, if Cadel Evans can actually reduce his time gap to Michael Rasmussen, I think Cadel has got a very good chance of moving a little bit closer even in the final time trial.
It could all happen. 25 to go for the chase.
So this is the chasing group of 8 riders. That's Cedric Vasseur there. The 2 riders in this group from Bouygues Telecom are Jérôme Pinault and Anthony Geslin. In the group as well, Philippe Gilbert, the Belgian rider on the FDJ. The man with his hand in the air there is Marcos Serrano. He wasn't in the group at the start of the day, but in fact he came across the gap with Oscar Pereiro, but Oscar Pereiro dropped him on the slopes of the Col de l'Aubisque. Pereiro did a magnificent performance of riding up to this leading group, straight past them, and then before the summit of the climb, he was in 2nd place, and then on the descent he caught up with Cadel Evans. A little bit further down the descent they were joined by Eddie Mazzolini, and then a great descent as well by Xavier Zandier of the Îles Baleares squad to form what is now a 4-man leading group. But the pressure and the pace is certainly on at the front end of the main field, because the Australian Cadel Evans, former World Cup mountain bike winner, is actually looking at tickling 4th place in the overall standings here at the Tour de France. But I tell you what, The pressure is certainly on here in this group, because this group is stretched out here into a very long line, and that's because of the pressure, not on this occasion of Team Discovery Channel, but because of the pressure of a number of teams, Team Rabobank, T-Mobile and Gerolsteiner, who can feel their own positions a little bit threatened in the overall standings on this last big Pyrenean mountain stage. Peter Weening, he's the young rider, won that stage into Gérardmer. A very good tactical sprint when he took out Andreas Kloden in the sprint to the line, in a finish that was reputedly 1/10,000th of a second. It really was very close, and when you looked initially at the photo finish, it was hard to see whether or not he'd got the win on that occasion. That's Severe on the right-hand side in the pink. He's just in his turn at the front. These guys are really suffering. It's difficult to get your body up and running again, especially after a big rest day, which is what the riders faced up to yesterday. But Armstrong seems to have come through it well, as does the rest of his squad. So this is the leading group of 4. Zandi on the back. Never won a race in his career. It's his first attempt at the Tour de France. Eddie Mazzolini, he has been here before, but Eddie Mazzolini we've talked a lot more about in races like the Tour of Italy as we go through now. Now this is going to be the start of the final climb of the day, the Côte du Pardi Étape. Mazzolini is actually riding the Tour de France for the 4th time. He hasn't ridden for a couple of seasons. That's Mazzolini there wearing number 151. And that's Pereiro on the front.
Oscar Pereira wearing the red number as the most aggressive rider of the last time he raced, which was Sunday in the Tour de France when he finished second to Hincapie at the top of the Plat d'Aix. Let me tell you, by the way, the crowds it took to come off the top of the Plat d'Aix. There's 7 hours that was left of that day, all of the night, and they were still coming off when we drove away from the bottom the next morning at 9 a.m. It was still a traffic jam.
Well, reputedly there were 500,000 people watching that race in the last 15 kilometers. That really is pretty remarkable. This is the main field going through the 25 kilometer to go point, and they are, Phil, stretched out into a very long line. I think the alarm bells are ringing for 1 or 2 riders who've defended their position in the overall standings over the last couple of days, and could see the man on the front there, Cadel Evans, knocking them off.
Well, at the moment they've closed in ever so slightly. Cadel Evans is now only into 7th place, still ahead of Floyd Landis, so the chase is having some effect. But time is running out. 21 kilometers to go to the finish, and as you can see now, these riders, 3 different teams. Well, there's 4 actually, because the Crédit Agricole rider down there is also helping out. Our monitors today, our computer telling us Sebastian Eno's heart rate currently at 162 beats per minute and riding at 50 kilometers an hour, while Jörg Ludwig, who's in the chasing group, he's riding only at 43 kilometers an hour at 153 beats to the minute. That's on our computer here.
Well, the pressure is certainly on in the peloton, and that's because of the presence of a man by the name of Cadel Evans from Australia in that leading group of 4 riders, who today is trying to move himself into the top 10 in the overall classification. It is a great move by Cadel Evans, and he's been joined by 4 very tough bike riders. But if we had to pick a winner, Phil, from this leading group of 4, it would be very hard to do, because the man at the back there, Zandier, hasn't won a race in his career. Pereira on the right-hand side is not a great winner. He's actually only won 4 races in his career. Cadel Evans, from the leading quartet, is the man who has been the most successful since he turned professional. So I'd like to think that he's got a very good crack at taking the win.
Well, it's going to be a sprint, I would think, between the 4 of them, and it's a tortuous approach, and it's not flat as they run in through the city of Pau. The actual finish line is on the flat, but there's a lovely springboard before you get there. We'll see what happens. We're not far from the finish now. There's one small climb to come, and they're on it at the moment.
Well, this is just a small climb. It's only ranked a 4th category. The summit of the climb of the Côte de Pardi Pietà is at 19.5 kilometers to go, and that's at the speeds these men are racing corresponds to around about 28 minutes. This is the next group. They are still hovering at around about 2 minutes. That's Philippe Gilbert on the front, the Belgian rider on the FDJ. This is Juan Antonio Fletcher coming forward. He's the man for the aggression. Just going through there is Pinot. This is Serrano. And this is the other man who just is sitting on the back there, Anthony Geslin. Also in the group for AG2R, Ludovic Turpin. They've closed in a fraction, actually, on that leading group. They're 1 minute and 47 seconds in arrears, and so, too, has the yellow jersey group, too, because they are now down at 4 minutes and 47 seconds. But these two groups are on the final slopes of this fourth category climb. I don't think they will try and sprint it out because the points are not important. What they need to do is to keep together as a cohesive group. They don't want to upset anybody by trying to sprint for a few points at the top of this climb. The most important thing is to keep together as a group to try and conserve their advantage over the chasing group of 8. It's quite strange. We're looking at this 2.6 kilometer climb, which climbs up to 390 meters. It's only an average gradient of 5.2%, but the summit is 19.5 kilometers to the finish. That's around about 12.5 miles. This is Xavier Zandier, been a professional since 2000, never won a race. Pereiro has won 4 races in his career. Eddie Mazzolini's only won 2 races in career, but he's much more renowned as a man who wins or places high in the overall classification of the big grand tours like the Giro d'Italia. Evans has been the most prolific rider, turning professional back in 2001. He's won 11 races in his career in a number of races around the world. For example, like the Tour of Austria, where he's been very successful on the stage in the Tour Down Under back in 2002. But today, I think, probably with a little bit extra motivation because of the sadness and the dark cloud which has descended over Australian cycling, maybe he can do something to try and pull that cloud away a fraction, although that is going to take an awful long time for the people involved in that tragedy that happened just 24 hours ago on the German roads. Eddie Mazzolini taking on board a bottle, getting the last little bit of information. He wants to know exactly who is doing the chasing, what is the exact split to the group behind. Well, Eddie, I can tell you it's around about 1 minute and 24 seconds, and that's the banner indicating 20 kilometers to go to the finish. So they're about 500 meters from the summit of this climb. Cadel Evans has been probably one of the unluckiest professional bike riders in the world. In my counting, I think he's broken his collarbone on 7 separate occasions. Last time, I think, was back in 2003. So Pereiro getting maximum points. Cadel Evans going over the top of that climb in 2nd place. And 3rd place was the Spanish rider in the group, Xavier Zandier. This is the next group. This is Cedric Vasseur. He made a good move getting into the early breakaway of the day, and he will be thinking about whether or not this is going to all come back together. It is starting to come back, but only very slowly.
Well, the original breakaway, Vasseur, who won at Chartres a few years ago now, one of only 2 riders in the breakaway who's ever won a stage of the Tour de France. The other one was Fletcher, won at Toulouse. There's the times, 1:52 and 4:35, I think it was. They have, the chase is having its effect. They are cutting into that breakaway. Cadel will still gain time. At the moment, he would go up to 7th place overall.
Well, Philippe Gilbert's just jumped away from this group, and the other guys kind of looked the other way, attacked so aggressively. I'm not sure that's the most sensible thing to do, because he's not going to ride across a 2-minute gap on his own, and he needs a little bit of assistance, probably from the other riders in the group with him.